Hello and welcome to a new video with me, Ophilia Adler. Today I wanted to do a book tag because we haven't really done a book tag or a tag in a very long time, and I thought it is time. It's soon summer, it's very warm outside, and I felt what better time to do a fun tag about reading habits. During summer, I feel like that's when we have the most time to calm down and sit down and actually start picking up books and start having new habits because we have our vacation days, and that's when we can start working on habits that we really want to have. And that's why I thought that I want to talk about my reading habits and what they usually look like. If you find these kind of videos interesting, do leave a like and a comment. Maybe tell me about your reading habits. I would love to see what kind of habits you guys have. But without further ado, I think let's just get into the questions. There are 10 questions, and the first one is, do you have a certain place at home for reading? And I don't, but I also do. I'm the kind of person that can read anywhere and anywhere. I have conditioned myself that no matter where I am, I want to be able to read. And I do have a reading chair. I found a really comfortable chair at a secondhand store. Like, I tried it to sit in it, and it was just perfectly, just so comfortable. And it has like these armrests that you can put your arms on, where you can hold your book perfectly. So I did buy it because I wanted it to be in my library, which it kinda is. It stands by my my bookshelves, and I do sit and I read. But at the same time, I think I spend more time reading in my bed, in different kind of positions in bed, or on the floor. I have a weird thing about reading on the floor, that I'm actually reading in this reading chair that I bought for myself. I also read a lot at work, which is behind the library counter in the school library that I work at. So that's also one of my certain reading spaces, I think. But so I do have a spot that was intended for reading, but I can't say I use it mainly or it's the main place that I read. It's actually the least used place that I read at. But I do have a place. The second question is bookmark or random piece of paper. I do have a couple of really cool bookmarks. Let me put in some pictures here that I really love to use. I'm not a bookmark person though, because I place things everywhere and then I tend to lose them, especially bookmarks. So I feel like I have bookmarks that I really like to use, but I also misplace them a lot, and then they just like come up and I'm like, oh yeah, I have that one. So I mainly use anything I can get my hands on that's like close at hands when I need it, which is usually a sheet of paper, a receipt, or something like that. I also started using hair ties, and I know that sounds really dumb, but I have so many hair ties just all around my place, in every room, and they are like really easy to just grab and put in between the papers. And mind you that if you use stuff like that, they will fall out. So it's only good if you're going to have a book that is going to lay on a flat surface. You can't really put stuff like that into your book and then bring it with you somewhere. But if your book is going to stay at home, I don't find a problem with it. Then you can basically put anything. But I also have a thing that sometimes kids don't, when they return books from the library, the school library that I work at, they sometimes don't, they forget their bookmarks in their books. And I hold on to the bookmarks in hope that the kids will come back, and I'm like, hey, did you forget this or forget this, you know? Sometimes they do find their rightful place. Sometimes they don't, which means free bookmark for me. And that's where I think I got most of my bookmarks from. Especially, I got a lot of Pokemon cards. A lot of people use Pokemon cards for bookmarks, and I love that. So I too have like 3 or 4 bookmarks out of Pokemon cards. Third question. Can you stop reading, or do you have to stop after a chapter or a certain amount of pages? I could stop reading anytime. I think anyone legit can. But I tend to not like to do that. I prefer ending on a chapter, which is every time that I'm starting a new chapter, I always flip through the pages and count exactly how many pages that chapter is. And then I calculate that usually this page would take me this many minutes or whatever. And then I calculate how long that will take me to read, and if I have time to read one more chapter, because I could not end in the middle of a chapter. If it's like an emergency, I of course would, but it wouldn't feel right to me to end in a middle somewhere. If it's not like some books have really, really fucking long chapters, right? But then they have like these paragraphs where it's like, this is an end to this, and then we're starting somewhere else. Then I could end there. But if it's not like a perfect cut in the story, I would not be able to stop. Or I would prefer to end the chapter. Fourth question. Do you eat or drink while reading? And I don't like eating while I'm reading, mainly because I mainly read library books, and as a librarian, I don't want to mess those books up. And if I'm reading my own books, I also don't want to mess those books up as well. I could eat depending on what it is, but I prefer not to eat. If it's like a snack, sure. If it's a full-on dinner, I don't think so. Especially if not, it's like a messy dinner, you know, like pasta, and you can spill the sauce everywhere, or it could like, I don't know. No, I don't think so. No, but I do drink when I'm reading. I love drinking either coffee or tea. Yeah, those are the two that I prefer drinking while reading. And I don't know. It's a hard question because it depends on the time, I guess. It's like, am I reading an audiobook? I can do basically anything. But if I'm reading a normal book, I've seen a lot of people. I have a friend, especially, she reads while she eats dinner, and I get it, but I also don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I understand why she would do it, because like some people, they watch videos while they're eating and stuff like that. and she tends to read while she eats. But I would be so scared of like dropping something in the book or splash to the book or on the pages or anything, and I don't think I would be able to do that. But I do like going to cafes and having like a cake and tea and read. But that's not really full on eating dinner. So I think it depends on what you're eating. But I don't think I have like a preferred, I need to eat while reading or I don't eat while reading. I think it's somewhere in between. It depends. Number 5, multitasking. I know this is like a really controversial thing, but like, can you listen to music or TV while you're reading? And I could more back in the day, I think. I come from a household where my parents don't read. There was always like sports on the TV. My dad would watch like hockey games or football games or whatever. There was like always sports on the TV, which kind of made it into like background noises that you always heard them. It was always on the TV. So you come accustomed to the sound of it. So in the end, you can like zone that out. So when I was younger and I lived at home with my parents, I did not have a problem with that. I feel like today I have a bigger problem with that because now I'm so accustomed to the fact that I'm alone and I can decide whether it's going to be like silence or not silence. So a TV is a big no. And the only reason why it's a big no for me is because they usually talk. It's usually people who talk, right? There's always like people are talking on the TV, you know? And if people are talking, I can't really zone out words. And I think it's the same when it comes to music. I can listen to classical music and maybe ambient sounds, but I cannot listen to music that have lyrics to it. And it's not because like, you know, I always listen to the lyrics like intently, but if I'm reading something, my dyslexia sometimes, if I hear a word and I'm reading a similar word, they sometimes connect to each other and I can get confused. I'm like, I heard this, but I read this, are they not connected? And I start overthinking. And I think I'm doing it in the back of my mind because sometimes I just like come back from my spaced out reading state and I'm like, where am I? And I don't understand how things go together. And that's most likely because I don't know. I put the book and the song together and sometimes that makes my reading really confusing. So I try to stay away from all kind of like lyrical music or people talking TV or podcasts or anything like that. But if it's ambience or classical music, that's a lot easier. But then again, it depends on what I'm reading. If I'm reading, for example, a manga or a graphical novel or a comic, it doesn't have as much words to it and it's easier to listen to music with lyrics to it or having a TV in the background being background noises because I don't have to, it's not that big of a chunk of words on a paper that has to go together with the background noises. But if I have to pick something, I would pick completely silence. Number 6, one book at a time or several at once. In the beginning, I was very much only one book. I don't understand people who read multiple books and that's weird to me. Right now, I'm more of the one that I can read like several books at once, but they have to be very, very very different from each other. For example, I read one audiobook, I read one physical book, and I read maybe one manga series at a time. And it's technically 3 different books at the same time, but they have to be that vastly different so I don't merge them together. Like it can't be like a big like it can't be a big chance for me to merge them together and get confused about the plot. I don't think I could read several books at once that's from the same genre or the same kind of book. That would make me really, really confused. So if I do read several books at once, it's most likely several very vastly different books. It could be like one fictional, one non-fictional, and one audiobook and one manga, for example. That way I can keep them very separate from each other. Number 7, reading at home or everywhere. And like I stated before, I read everywhere. I read on the train, I read on the train station, I read on the bus, I read while I'm walking sometimes. I don't do that anymore because that's really dangerous and you need to see what cars and bikers do. So don't walk while reading. Not a good idea. But basically, anywhere you could be, I read. I always bring a book with me because you never know when you are going to have to kill some time. And if I don't bring a book, I always have ebooks on my phone. And so everywhere. I do love reading at cafes for some reading and really like that ambience of the cafe chill kind of sounds. But I do like reading at home as well because it's very silent and I can cozy up in my bed. But anywhere, I guess. Number 8, reading out loud or silent in your head. And this depends on the day because as I am dyslexic, sometimes it's easier to me to read out loud because if I hear it, it makes more sense to me than if I'm reading silently in my head. When I was younger, I always read out loud for my stuffed animals and for my pet cat. My cats loved it when I read to them. They would always come into my room and fall asleep in my bed or in my arms while I read to them. And technically I read to them, but I read for myself to understand better. Today, my dyslexia is not as brutal as it was back in the day because I have really worked on it and gotten a lot better. So I think mainly I read silently in my head. But if I'm having a hard time grasping a paragraph or I'm having a really bad day with like a lot of thoughts in my head, or a lot of issues with stress or anything, that's when my dyslexia can come back. And those days I read out loud a lot more than I do silently in my head. But I would say it's probably a split between 60% silently in my head and 40% out loud. So it's still kinda the same, I would say. But I heard a lot of people thinking it's weird to read out loud, but I don't know, I just find it very comfortable, but I'm also very used to it. I also read out loud at work when I read for my students, so I read out loud a lot. Number 9, do you read ahead or do you skip pages? I've never skipped pages in a book, like, ever. The only thing I do is I look how many pages there is in a chapter, so I can kind of calculate how long it would take to read another chapter and if I have time or energy to do one more chapter. I think that's the only thing that I do. But I do remember when I was 14 or 15, it was the third book in the Aragon series, and we get to follow Aragon's brother, Rowan, and I didn't like it because every other chapter was about Rowan, and I thought he was like the most boring character of all time. So 14, 15-year-old Ophi skipped all his chapters because I wanted to read about Aragon, Seraphine, and the dragons, and Rohan did not have any dragons. Today I can see his values in his chapters because like his side of the story was very good. But I just wanted the action and dragons, and Rohan had no dragons, so I skipped all his pages. I did go back and read his chapters at a later state though, but I just wanted to like proceed in the story with the dragons, so I just skipped all his chapters. I think that's the only time I actually have skipped something, but that was many, many, many years ago. I have grown up since. Number 10, breaking the spine or keeping it like new. And this, I don't understand why people enjoy breaking spines. I feel like any book lover would be like, that's torture. If I hear someone go when they open a book, I will legit die on the inside. So keep anything like it's new. There's also a way how to open a book, even a soft cover and a flexibound, that you open in a specific way to slowly open the book and making it softer in the spine, not cracking the spine, but keeping it looking just as new, but it making it soft enough to actually open it all the way. And I feel like any reader should learn how to do that. I learned how to do that in high school by my Swedish teacher, and he was like having a full-on lesson on how to open a new book not to break the spine, because he thought it was really important. Shout out to you. You're the best teacher I ever had, and I will never forget. I mainly don't like buying soft covers or flexi bounds. I do have some, but as many might know, I only buy books that I have in my bookshelves that are 5-star reads. I borrow all my books from the library. As a librarian, I know what we have and what we don't have, and I have very easy access to all the books that I want. And if I love a book, then I will buy it. And if I do love it and I will buy it, I will make sure it's a hardcover, because then I feel like I love the book. I want it in a hardcover. Is it a special edition of the book? I will most likely buy the special edition of the book because I want it to be pretty, because I love that book, right? So if you come to my home and you look at my bookshelves, all the books you see in my bookshelf are a representation of me as a reader, and they are all 5-star reads for me. And that's how I keep them. So I don't really have a problem with the breaking of the spines. I know you can break a spine on a hardcover, but it's a lot harder. And I think they mean with this is the soft covers that get, those lines, or you break the spine and the book goes in 2 pieces. And I would never do that. I would. It would hurt my inner soul and my heart if I can't even look at books like that. It pains me too much. And the last question is like a little bonus question, I guess, and it asks if I write my own books. And I did back in the day when I was in high school. I loved reading so much that I started writing. When I was in 2nd grade, I told my teacher I wanted to become an author, and that was my dream job. I told my dad as well in 2nd and 3rd grade, and he told me you need a steady, normal job. So that's when I decided to become a librarian, because then I will at least be surrounded by books. And that's where I am today. I stopped writing books, I think, when I was in university. Not because I don't want to write anymore, but because I just lost my love for books. There was so much reading and literature and everything going on in the university that I just lost all my joy for reading. Then I started working, and then you were forced to read because of work as a librarian, and it was hard to getting into that love for reading it again. I am there now, but now I am, on the other hand, like, I know so much background to books and literature that finding an original idea today to write about is very, very hard, because there's so much out there. And then I've read so many good things, and I compared my own things to it, and I'm like, I could never write at that, same level. But I do have some book ideas I really want to write. As a school librarian, I feel like there are some themes and some book genres for children that we don't really see that often, and I really want to fill those gaps. So if I do start writing again, it will most likely be children's fiction and children's books. So that will be interesting, I guess. But right now, I can't say that I write books. But I have had written short novels that I have won some prizes for, and I also written a lot of stories back in the day, and also been in writing clubs and stuff like that. So writing is cool. Books are cool. I love books. But yeah, that's all the questions from this tag. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and like I said in the beginning, please write a comment about your reading habits, and if you like this video, leave a like, and I will see you next Sunday on our next video. Bye!